Toronto's light favorites, 98.1 CHFI, and relax with us online at CHFI.com.
From the heart of the city, this is the soundtrack to Find Some Boundaries. Good evening, I'm Don Jackson. February 23rd has been known by the ancients as the Festival of Terminalia, when Terminus, god of boundaries, is acknowledged. That according to the Pagan Book of Days by Nigel Pennick, published by Destiny Books in Rochester, Vermont. Harold Lyon wrote, "It is not our toughness that keeps us warm at night, but our tenderness, which makes others want to keep us warm." Beyond the Boundaries, tonight, with Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, Faith Hill and Breathe, and Aerosmith, and I Don't Want to Miss a Thing. There are many books in my library that continually inspire me. One of them is A Garland of Love, Daily Reflections on the Magic and Meaning of Love, by Daphne Rose Kingma, published in 1992 by Canary Press. In it, she wants to help us reach out beyond our self-imposed boundaries. She writes, and I quote, "Love is a melting of boundaries. Through it, we enter one another's bodies, hearts, and minds. We sense another human spirit. We partake of the human condition. We hear so much these days about over-involvement with others, about the need to have strong boundaries, and indeed, boundaries are appropriate much of the time. So how do we differentiate between love and invasion? When the melting of boundaries flatters our spirits, enhances us, and makes us feel whole, we are experiencing love. When the dissolution of boundaries makes us fearful, gives us a sense of having been wrongly encroached upon, we are being invaded, abused. Just as we have had to be vigilant about developing our boundaries, so too must we be passionate in allowing love to dissolve the barriers that we have built so that we can let in more love." The words of Daphne Rose Kingma from her book A Garland of Love, Daily Reflections on the Magic and Meaning of Love, published in 1992 by Canary Press. Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, Bryan Adams, Why Do You Have to Be So Hard to Love, and Blue Rodeo and Bulletproof. Human beings can be cruel. You don't have to look any further than the front page of the newspaper, the evening news, or behind the bars of prison for proof of that. Henry Van Dyke wrote, "Self is the only prison that can ever bind the soul." We erect walls to protect our home and family. They offer us safety from the storm and from creatures that come out at night. Carl Sandburg wrote, "Now the stone house on the lakefront is finished, and the workmen are beginning the fence. The palings are made of iron bars with steel points that can stab the life out of any man who falls on them. As a fence, it is a masterpiece, and will shut off the rabble and all vagabonds and hungry men and all wandering children looking for a place to play. Passing through the bars and over the steel points will go nothing except death and the rain and tomorrow." The words of Carl Sandburg. If I were in the market to buy a new home and found a wall completely surrounding the property built much higher than is necessary, I would think twice of buying until I found out what the owners were so frightened of. Besides, there's never been made a wall that could withstand all assaults. Edgar Allan Poe's story of the Mask of the Red Death proves that. Even the Great Wall of China had its weaknesses. And what usually makes it through is nothing large and foreboding. William Shakespeare wrote, "Comes at the last, and with a little pin bores through his castle wall. And farewell, King." Herbert Shipman wrote, "Across the gateway of my heart I wrote no thoroughfare, but love came laughing by. He cried, I enter everywhere." Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, Amanda Stott, and a Homeless Heart. My companion writing also has some clear-cut boundaries tonight. Log on to the CHFI website, follow the links on the homepage at CHFI.com. And Lovers and Other Strangers returns. I'm Don Jackson.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy. This is Lovers and Other Strangers on 98.1 CHFI. Toronto's light favorites, 98.1 CHFI. And relax with us online at CHFI.com.
And welcome back to the boundaries of Lovers and Other Strangers, and now a blog as well at CHFI.com. I'm Don Jackson. Back to the book A Garland of Love, published by Canary Press. Daphne Rose Kingma writes, and again I quote, "Love makes us pass through the walls of our own limitations. This means that time and again we find ourselves doing, saying, trying, giving up, or putting up with the very things we swore we never would do, say, or put up with. Waiting for him to come home for the 477th time, patiently explaining again why we need time alone. When we do this for love, we expand not only our horizons, but also our boundaries. We become more than we were. We're not always happy about it. Frankly, it's a lot of trouble, and often it's quite painful. But the lessons we learn make us ever more able to love." Some wise words from Daphne Rose Kingma. Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, Norah Jones, and Don't Know Why, and simply read, If You Don't Know Me By Now. Daphne Rose Kingma goes on to write, and again I quote, "There are certain experiences, running, dancing, making love, listening to music, reading scintillating prose, that take us out beyond the boundaries between flesh and spirit. When we are in this pure, undifferentiated state of being, separated not even from ourselves, we are in the state of love." Again, some wise words from Daphne Rose Kingma. Dr. Ethel S. Person, in her book Dreams of Love and Fateful Encounters, The Power of Romantic Passion, she wrote, "At moments of spiritual union, transcendent moments, as it were, time no longer exists. The moment is timeless, eternal. The boundaries self-dissolve. Though paradoxically, the self is neither lost nor diminished. Quite the contrary, the self is affirmed and enriched. The sensory perceptions of that instant are heightened, and its emotional resonance enshrined in memory. For such a moment, one will sacrifice the future and the past. The memory of it can be suppressed, but never really obliterated. It may return unexpectedly and it can always be recalled at will. Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, Celine Dion, Have You Ever Been in Love, and Sarah McLachlan with Angel. One final quote on the subject this hour from author and lecturer, the late Leo Buscaglia, from his book Born for Love. He wrote, and I quote, "There is a certain element of risk in seeking closeness with another human being. Acknowledging our need for others can be very frightening. It makes us vulnerable. The paradox is that we need to open ourselves to someone, but we want to do so without risk. We want to consign ourselves without commitment. We want closeness without vulnerability. Yet intimacy can only come when we are willing to reach out to others without guarantee, as we hope others will. This need is universal, inborn. There can be no doubt that everyone feels this as deeply as we do. A desire for intimacy is a sign of strength, not weakness, maturity, not neurotic need. When love is accompanied with deep intimacy, we rise to the highest level of human experience. In this exalted space, we willingly surrender our egos and attain a glimpse of the rapture that can be ours. Boundaries are blurred. There are no limitations. We become one and, at the same time, both. Leo Buscaglia from his book, Born for Love. Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. Stay tuned. Lovers and Other Strangers returns. I'm Don Jackson.
Romance set to words and music. Lovers and Other Strangers on 98.1 CHFI. Toronto's light favorites, 98.1 CHFI. And relax with us online at CHFI.com.
We're in the heart of Toronto, around the world on the internet, and now a blog as well at CHFI.com. My companion writing has some very definite, clear-cut boundaries. Log on now to the CHFI website. Follow the links on the homepage. Good evening once again. I'm Don Jackson. In the book A Dictionary of Greek and Roman Mythology, published by Bell, a division of Crown some years back, author Michael Stapleton wrote, in Hesiod, Eros is a god. He is one of the oldest gods, as old as Earth herself. Eros was a force to be feared for the havoc he could cause, and neither gods nor men were immune from him. Eros inspires love nevertheless, and for the Greeks, this had no boundaries. Unquote. And according to the Gage Canadian Dictionary, Hermes was the god of boundaries and roads, of science and invention, of eloquence, luck, and cunning. And he was the patron of thieves. Some of the boundaries experienced by Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, Matchbox 20, If You're Gone, and Whitney Houston, Saving All My Love for You. Bushes and creepers, confused and tangled, seem to know no boundaries. They pull down walls and fill up moats, and beyond 1,000 miles only brown dust flies. Deep in my thoughts, I sit down and listen to this awesome silence. An excerpt from a writing from the 4th century called The Ruined City, translated by C.J. Chen and Michael Bullock. Edward Whiting said you can no more measure a home by inches or weigh it by ounces than you can set up boundaries of a summer breeze or calculate the fragrance of a rose. Home is the love which is in it. And in an article about the wind in Audubon magazine some time back, and I quote, elusive, mysteriously powerful, it lures us beyond our self-imposed boundaries. Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, RyanDan, like the sun, and Hayley sails with what you want. In one of the Star Trek movies, the Starship Enterprise must cross the boundary that separates the edge of the universe from the place where legend has it that God exists. What they find there is godlike. But that's where the comparison ends. Michael Disney, in American Scientist magazine, said apparently to be human is to care how the physical world came to be, whether it has boundaries, and what is to become of it. Michael Disney, an American Scientist. Our myths are filled with legends about the natural boundaries being crossed. In a tale from Water Spirits, contained in the Time Life collection The Enchanted World, was this. At the borderlines between land and water, the beaches that rim the oceans, the reed-fringed shores of lakes, the banks of brooks and rivers, men and women sometimes encountered the ancient beings of the aquatic realm. Such meetings were filled with hazard. Even the natural laws of their world were different and spelled danger, as those humans knew who answered their calls and crossed the boundaries of their territories. If you've been watching the hit series Lost, then you know that the plane crash survivors occasionally run into a column of black smoke that has the voice of a dragon, that seems to be a guard of some sort to keep them from crossing certain boundaries. Eventually, they do make it through some of the dangerous man-made boundaries on the island, and in the process begin the long trek to some sort of freedom that, of course, is being explored this season. Quite some time ago, I told you the story about a 90-year-old woman who continued to live in the farmhouse. It was the home she raised a family in. She continued to work her garden with tender, loving care, who refused to give in to old age, even to the dismay of her 70-year-old children. You know, it sounds like she might be quite comfortable on the internet, as I said at the time. She had the right attitude about life and aging, and I even think she would be willing to adapt to changing technology rather than be fearful of it. She probably would have preferred a simpler time when the boundaries were much clearer than they are today. But I got the impression from her story that she wouldn't be afraid to step into the future. Reminds me of this from Dr. Charles Roper, who wrote quite a lengthy poem after experiencing Outward Bound. I listen to the sky, and it says, open up. Let go of your boundaries and barriers, which you have created to protect yourself. Experience change. Fly. Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, that's Eva Avila and Meant to Fly. My companion writing tonight has some very definite, clear-cut boundaries and some that are rather easy to cross. Log on to the CHFI website, follow the links on the homepage at chfi.com. And Lovers and Other Strangers returns. I'm Don Jackson.
Romance set to words and music. Lovers and Other Strangers on 98.1 CHFI. Toronto's light favorites, 98.1 CHFI. And relax with us online at chfi.com.
And welcome back to the boundaries of Lovers and Other Strangers. Now a blog as well at chfi.com. I'm Don Jackson. This is an excerpt from a very old book, A Time for Love by Eugene C. Kennedy, who wrote, and I quote, "Man discovers, when he allows himself to become a part of real life, the pain of being human. This pain has nothing to do with sickness or with mankind's sometimes savagery. It is, rather, the suffering of the healthy person, pain with 1,000 private faces, the pain that goes with the vulnerability of just being alive. No man is inoculated against the ache of his struggle to become himself as a human being and a child of God. Money cannot buy it off. Luxuries do not soften it. And no jet plane travels far or fast enough to outdistance it. Man cannot run away from his pain without running away from himself. He can narcotize himself in 100 ways against it, but he thereby numbs himself to the very deepest meaning of life. Man can only face and deal with it honestly. In facing the normal pain of life, a man discovers his own inner strength to be free and responsible. His best self begins to emerge when he confronts the truth about his inescapable limitations and longings. This happens whenever a person senses the ragged boundaries of the human condition as set in space and time. He faces it whenever he wonders, in whatever situation, whether he can make it or not. Indeed, it is the quite ordinary effort to believe in oneself and in others that makes men recognize each other as brothers. An excerpt from A Time for Love, a realistic discussion of the most explosive force in human life by Eugene C. Kennedy, a Doubleday image book published in February of 1972. Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, Lone Star, I'm Already There, and 5 for Fighting with the Riddle. I don't say he's a great man. Willie Loman never made a lot of money. His name was never in the paper. He's not the finest character that ever lived. But he's a human being, and a terrible thing is happening to him. So attention must be paid. He's not to be allowed to fall into his grave like an old dog, attention. Attention must be finally paid to such a person. An excerpt from Act 1 of Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller, published in 1949. Sue Schellenbarger in the December 17, 1999 issue of the Wall Street Journal wrote, "As the work and family columnist for the Wall Street Journal, I've seen some inspiring examples of how some people beat the trap. From dramatic decisions like quitting their jobs to more modest approaches, such as drawing firmer boundaries around work or just scheduling downtime. I also know that you should not wait for utter exhaustion, an illness, or life-altering event, like the loss of a loved one, to move you to act." Some lines later, she writes, "In other cases, the catalyst is emotional. Many baby boomers are entering a life stage where the deaths of loved ones and other markers of mortality are jolting them out of their old rationalizations." Boundaries tonight. Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers. John Lennon watching the wheels. One final thought on boundaries. From Edgar Allan Poe, who wrote, "The boundaries which divide life from death are at best shadowy and vague. Who shall say where the one ends and where the other begins?" Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. Don't forget to read my blog at CHFI.com. That concludes another chapter of Lovers and Other Strangers. Lovers and Other Strangers returns after the sun sets. Good night. Sweet dreams. I'm Don Jackson.
Your life set to words and music. Lovers and Other Strangers on 98.1 CHFI.